64%, or a whopping 1.2 million people from across 50 countries, consider climate change an emergency. That's according to 2021's The People's Climate Vote, the largest ever climate survey by the United Nations Development Program. Another study by the Yale Program on Climate Communication revealed that about 72% of American adults believe that global warming is already happening. And they are right. As seen in the Washington Post, about 85% of the world's population has been affected by human-induced climate change. 800 million people, or 11% of the world's population, is actually currently vulnerable to climate change impacts such as droughts, floods, heat waves, extreme weather events, and sea level rise. In this video, we uncover the truth about climate change and the essential facts you need to know. From the alarming increase in carbon dioxide levels in our atmosphere to the impending consequences of exceeding 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming, we'll cover it all. Let's get started.
That human activities are responsible for climate change.
Climate change.
Climate problem.
Climate change.
First of all, is climate change really a thing? For over a century, scientists have understood why greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide cause warming. These gases make up only a small part of our atmosphere, but they have a huge impact on Earth's climate. They trap some of the planet's heat, which is why we have liquid water and life on our planet, despite being so far from the sun. Even so, things started to change during the Industrial Revolution. At this point, we started burning coal and other fossil fuels to power factories, smelters, and steam engines. And you know what that means. More greenhouse gases added to the atmosphere. As a result, human activities have been heating up our planet ever since. It's pretty incredible to think about all the evidence we have showing that the Earth is getting hotter. We can trace this back to temperature measurements taken at weather stations and on ships as far back as the mid-1800s. Later on, scientists began tracking surface temperatures with satellites and looking for clues about climate change in geological records. And when we put all of that data together, the story is pretty clear. Our planet is getting warmer. Since 1880, average global temperatures have gone up by 2.2 degrees Fahrenheit, or about 1.2 degrees Celsius. And the biggest changes happened in the late 20th century. Interestingly, land areas have warmed up more than the sea surface, and the Arctic has warmed up the most, by over 4 degrees Fahrenheit, just since the 1960s. We're also seeing changes in temperature extremes. In the US, for example, daily record highs now outnumber record lows by 2 to 1. Now that you know climate change is as real as your shadow, let's talk about the facts that support it. Fact 1. Our atmosphere has more carbon dioxide in it now than at any other point in human history. Heard about the latest measurement at the Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii? This observatory has been tracking Earth's atmospheric concentration of CO2 since the late 1950s. And in February and March of 2021, sensors detected CO2 concentrations of over 417 parts per million, or ppm. That's a lot. Just to put it in perspective, pre-industrial levels were 278 ppm. So basically, we're halfway to doubling the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere compared to the period between 1750 and 1800. It's worth noting that CO2 concentrations do fluctuate with the seasons, and even with a small reduction in emissions in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the annual CO2 concentration for 2021 is predicted to be around 416.3 ppm. But here's the really scary part. The last time our atmosphere had this much CO2 in it was over 3 million years ago. Back then, sea levels were several meters higher, and trees even grew at the South Pole. It's definitely a cause for concern. Fact 2. We're on track to exceeding 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming. Back in 2015, the nations behind the Paris Agreement set a pretty ambitious goal: keep global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius. But according to the latest IPCC report, that's going to be a pretty tough goal to reach unless we take drastic action to cut emissions, like yesterday. The report modeled 5 different future emission scenarios, from very high emissions to very low emissions. And in each scenario, we're expected to hit at least 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming. Out of all the scenarios they modeled, only the very low emission scenario estimated that we'd see less than 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming by the end of the 21st century. But even in that scenario, temperatures are still expected to overshoot 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming between 2041 and 2060 before coming back down to 1.4 degrees Celsius of warming by the end of the century. So yes, it's going to take some major emissions reductions, and fast, if we want to make any real progress. Right now, based on our current emissions, it looks like we're on track to hit between 2.7 degrees Celsius and 3.1 degrees Celsius of warming by 2100. That's a pretty big difference from our goal of 1.5 degrees Celsius, and it's definitely something we need to take seriously. Fact 3. We have little remaining on our carbon budget. Climate change is a complex issue, but the basic idea is easy to understand. When we release carbon dioxide and other warming gases into the atmosphere, global temperatures rise. Since 1850, humans have already released a staggering 2,390 gigatons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, causing a 1.07 degrees Celsius increase in global temperatures compared to pre-industrial levels. To have a 50-50 chance of keeping global temperatures from rising more than 1.5 degrees Celsius, we can only release an additional 500 gigatons of carbon dioxide, including emissions from 2020 and beyond. Unfortunately, we are still emitting over 36 gigatons of carbon dioxide per year, making it likely that we will surpass this carbon budget. To keep temperatures below 2 degrees of warming, we must emit fewer than 1,350 gigatons of carbon dioxide. Fact 4. Extreme heat events have become more frequent and severe. It's easy to see that climate change is causing more frequent and severe hot weather events when we look at recent devastating wildfires in places like Australia, California, and Southern Europe. Extreme heat events that used to happen only once every 10 years between 1850 and 1900 are now occurring 2.8 times every 10 years, and this is projected to increase to 4.1 times every 10 years in a world that experiences 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming. Similarly, once in every 50-year events are now more likely to occur 4.8 times every 50 years. And in a world that reaches 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming, this will increase to 8.6 times every 50 years. Climate change is also making heavy rain more common. The type of heavy one-day rain that only occurred once every 10 years 150 years ago now happens 1.3 times every 10 years. With a 1.5 degrees Celsius warmer world, this is expected to increase to 1.5 times. As these extreme weather events become more frequent, they also become more severe, leading to hotter and wetter conditions than we have seen in the past. Fact 5. We have already caused 1.07 degrees Celsius of warming. According to the IPCC report, global surface temperatures have increased by 1.07 degrees Celsius compared to the period between 1850 to 1900. In fact, global surface temperatures have been rising at an unprecedented rate since 1970, faster than any 50-year period in the last 2,000 years. The trend has become more pronounced in recent years, with 2016 to 2020 being the hottest 5-year period on record since at least 1850. The IPCC report leaves no room for doubt, stating that the primary cause of this rise in temperature is due to greenhouse gases released by human activities. Did you know that global temperatures in July 2021 were higher than any other July on record, making it likely the hottest month in the world? Now you know. Fact 6. Sea levels are rising quicker than ever. Sea level rise is a major consequence of climate change, and it's caused by melting ice sheets and glaciers, as well as warmer ocean temperatures. Since 1900, sea levels have been rising faster than in any previous century in the last 3,000 years. Even if we were to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, global mean sea level will still rise by 2 to 3 meters over the next 2,000 years. However, if we exceed that threshold and allow warming to reach 2 degrees Celsius, we can expect sea levels to rise even higher, between 2 and 6 meters above current levels. And oh, It's important to note that much of the sea level rise is already set in motion, as oceans take a long time to warm up. Fact 7. Average wildlife populations have dropped by 60% in just over 40 years. Did you know that the average size of vertebrate populations, which includes mammals, fish, birds, and reptiles, has declined by a whopping 60% between 1970 and 2014? That's according to the Biennial Living Planet report, published by the Zoological Society of London and the WWF. Now, don't get confused thinking that the total number of animals has gone down by 60%. The report actually compares the relative decline of different animal populations. Let me give you an example. Let's say there was a population of 10 rhinos, and unfortunately, 9 of them died, resulting in a 90% population drop. Now, let's add that to a population of 1,000 sparrows, where 100 of them died, which is just a 10% decrease. When you calculate the average population decrease across these two groups, it would be 50%, even though the loss of individuals would be just 10.08%. Now, what do you think about climate change? Is it a real human concern or not? Let me know in the comments section below. While at it, smash the thumbs up button and share the video widely. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications to get alerts for future videos. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.